Learn the most empowering hiring techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with your host, Rick Gerard.
All right, now as a founder, your first hire is always the hardest. Now, most often we take the first person that will say yes, not putting a whole lot of diligence into the conversation about setting proper expectations. Now, what ends up happening with that is you either get really lucky if it works out, or it becomes a cautionary tale of what not to do when starting a business. Often a very expensive lesson to learn. So, starting with culture in mind from day one is the key to having difficult conversations that ensure your first hire's success. I'm Rick Gerard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and executives win the strongest people. We do so by sharing insights from top performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry leaders, like our guest today, Mr. Scott Hollrah. He is the founder and CEO of Venn Technology. Now, Scott has built a reputation as a technologist, problem solver, and a creator of great culture. In his role at Venn, he's focused on helping mid-market organizations become more effective through the use of automation. The company has won numerous awards, including Dallas Business Journal's Best Places to Work, and he's made the Inc. 5000 4 years in a row. In addition to family and work, Scott hosts In the Thick of It, a podcast that highlights the trials and triumphs of fellow founders. And he's an expert in building a culture that stands out from his competitors, which is what makes Scott the perfect expert for today's topic. Scott, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate you having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I'm excited to get this show going. You've done a really amazing job of building a culture. But when we talked offline, we talked a little bit about you started just like everybody else as a one-man show, and now you've kind of grown the organizations. Tell me a little bit about that first hire experience, because for most of us, it's not such a great experience, but I'll let you go from there. Let's talk about it.
So when I started the business, I went into it not knowing if it was going to be me by myself forever, if it was going to be me and a handful of people, or me and hundreds, or what. But I very intentionally did not name the company Scott Hollrah Consulting, just because I wanted to make sure that if it did take off, that it wasn't, too attached to me. About a year into the business, things started picking up to the point that I wanted to make sure that I could go kick the soccer ball around in the yard with my kids on the weekend or whatever. And so, started to bring on contractors to take on some things. And from there, really tapped that capacity and had a realization, wow, there's enough here. I've really got to get somebody else full-time in the organization. And so, as you said, hiring that first employee for me is one of the absolute hardest things I've ever had to do in the almost 10 years of running the business. And for me, it was hard for two reasons. Number one, I had just got to the point that I was confident that I could feed my own family. And as the owner, you eat last, your family eats last. And so I got to make sure that I can pay this other person and then continue to pay myself.
Yeah.
And once I got through that kind of the financial aspect, it was, all right, whoever I bring on, are they going to care about the success of the customer as much as I do? Are they going to be personally invested, or is this just going to be their 9 to 5, show up, do my thing, go home? And I tell you what, I lucked out. First hire, still with me. And, he has had that customer success driven mentality that's critical to keep this thing going.
I can feel right now, hundreds of listeners right now cursing you or flipping you off because they didn't get that same experience. By the way, I've gotten lucky too. I'm right there with you. I've worked with hundreds of startups throughout my career, and the greater majority of people, like of founders, have actually shared experiences that were quite the contrary. And I think it really came down to either trusting or assuming that somebody was going to work out. I know most of them didn't really have the difficult conversations that were involved would get you to a point where you'd be successful with that first hire. Did you have those conversations with your first hire?
It's interesting. having this conversation now, I'm actually it's hitting me just how lucky I really did get, because I don't think I interviewed anyone else. And um, it, we were introduced by a customer of mine that he had worked for years before. And this customer, it's a faith driven organization, and we're of like faith. And so knowing that I was being introduced to somebody who shared my values and somebody that worked for them would share their values, it was kind of a given that values were shared. And so, and thinking beyond that first hire, most of our best hires have been people that have been referred to us by other people on the team or by people that we know, people in our network. And so, again, shared values is just such an important thing.
When we talked offline, you said that you were very intentional about wanting to have a strong culture from the get go. And I think that you naturally fell into somebody who shared your values. And so it became pretty easy. But the key thing is there that you guys have shared values, and you really are building the organization under common belief system. Did you guys talk a lot about that when you interviewed?
At that point, the shared values, I think, were much more ethereal, and again, kind of rooted in faith. And it wasn't until he had been with me for probably 2, 3 years, and we'd hired additional people at that point, where we actually like codified our core values as an organization. And so, but you know, you spend some time around somebody, you get to know their character, you get a sense for who they are. And you know, I just got lucky that I feel like I got to see the real person early on, and that it wasn't a front.
A lot of times, I think when we have those initial conversations with people, maybe you went into it with a very clear mind too, but a lot of times it's a desperate conversation of, I need help, I'm drowning here. Can you be the person to throw me a life jacket?
And so let me back up and say, almost 10 years in business, we're currently a little over 30 employees. We're not batting 1,000. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had people that haven't worked out, and you do it long enough, you hire enough people, it is going to happen. Um, so let me let me make it clear that we haven't been perfect on this. But we've also been in we've been at points where we really needed that person for that role. And I can actually distinctly remember somebody that we had brought in for a project manager position. And multiple people said, yes, yes, yes. And when it got to me, after I'd had my interview with them, I had to ask the hard question here. Are we saying yes to this person because they are the only person that we have right now? Or if we had a dozen other people in front of us, is this the person we would say yes to? And it was a gut check for all of us. And I was tempted to pull the trigger. And when we were able to have honest conversation among ourselves, we all agreed, no, we wouldn't hire this person most likely if we had other choices in front of us. And so it is hard. It is hard to resist that temptation. You're going to be better off if you wait for the right one.
That is so true. Are you listening to the Higher Power Radio Show? I'm your host, Rick Girard. And for our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors.
This is William Tincup, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Indeed FutureWorks. Ryan and I attended the conference last year, and we created a limited series for Indeed where we talked to their customers. Great stories around TA and how they use Indeed to the max. So check it out. It's just Indeed FutureWorks 2024. You can search for it wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks.
All right, so I'm digging in deeper with our guest, Scott Hollrah. He is the founder and CEO of Venn Technology, and we're actually discussing a little bit about his journey. He's built a really strong culture, and one of the things that I want to do is delve into how you've built the strong culture. So we talked a little bit about some of the challenges you had in, man, It's funny. My dad used to always say, I'd rather be lucky than good. If you can own that, I swear my dad's been this person in my life who has created his own luck throughout his life, like just with this optimistic, I'm going to win attitude. I remember going to Tahoe one time and he walked up to a roulette table and he goes, I'm going to pay for our ski trip tonight. Put the $100 down, boom, hit the number. And I was just like, wow, like that, how does that?
This wasn't red or black. This was on
No, he put it down to
27.
like 30, yeah, 7 black or whatever I never played roulette. I mean,
That's a
boom,
big
35.
payout.
Yeah, 3,500 bucks right there, or something like that. I was blown away. You got to get some of that to rub off on me, but he's always been that guy. So you got lucky. I feel like I got lucky too. I created this thing called an expectations document, and I talked to quite a few potential co-founders before I got into bed with anybody. And what I did was I essentially went through and we did the exercise of what are my expectations, what are yours, what do you see this business building in at? And there was quite a few people that I shied away from because we just had different things in mind. I mean, we're not on the same page, which I'm happy to share with anybody. If they want them, they could drop me an email. I think that you naturally were able to kind of get introduced to somebody and you automatically maybe inherently knew that they were going to be the person. Was it gut thing or what was it?
Yeah, it was gut, and you know,
Gut and faith, right?
gut and faith for sure. And
Yeah.
you know, over the years, I probably do tend to lean on my gut more than anything. But over the years, I have developed pretty good intuition. As I said a minute ago, we're not batting 1,000. We haven't been perfect, but um, I've my gut has been pretty good to me. Um, that being said, in the early days, I think that where I started to evaluate people, my starting point for evaluating people, I should say, was skill. Do they have the hard skills that we need to do the job? And I probably wasn't thinking quite as much about the personality fit. I hate to even call it cultural fit in the first couple of years because the culture was still very much being formed.
Yeah.
But now I tend to put more emphasis on the cultural fit than the hard skills. I mean, we're not going to go hire a senior software developer that hasn't ever written code before just because they're a good cultural fit. But we lead more with the culture. And we'll in an interview, we might pull out one of our core values and ask them, hey, tell me about a time. What does this mean to you? And tell me about a time when you've demonstrated that. And it's interesting to see what people will say. And I think you and I've talked about EOS. We both are big fans of EOS. And when we do our quarterly planning with our leadership team, we do the RPRS, the right person, right seat analysis. And we've got our Google sheet and we put everybody's name, and we list out the core values. And they always exhibit it, they sometimes exhibit it, they don't exhibit it. And then within the EOS framework, it's get it, want it, capacity. And so GWC, and are they green across the board? Or there are a couple areas where, maybe they're really good at all these things, but there's just one core value that they're not necessarily really, leaning into. And that's, somebody that we need to coach on that.
It's funny, right person, right seat. That to me is always, you said I wouldn't hire a software engineer who fit the culture. Somebody fits the culture, they're right person, but wrong seat if they don't bring the skills to the table. One of the things that I've experienced is that it is hard to get that right combination of both. Most people are not going to fit your core values. And it's hard to walk away from somebody who has the right skills. They don't operate or they don't behave in a manner that's going to be conducive to us being successful. That tends to be a big argument that I had with some of my clients in the executive search space is like, look at this person operates completely different than you. They're not going to do well in your organization. They might be an A player at Google, but guess what? They're not an A player at your company.
Yeah. And, again, we've had people that haven't worked out, and I can think of a couple that it wasn't necessarily, there are some people that were a very good culture fit that were not very good at the job. And there just really
Yep.
wasn't a place elsewhere in the organization that we could slot them. And we've got some other people who were very good at the job, but weren't demonstrating our values. Like, so for example, one of our core values is one team. And it's not the generic teamwork. Um, in in a lot of organizations, and particularly in consulting and in tech, the way that people get ahead is by stepping on somebody else. And I've
Hmm.
never understood that kind of culture. Like, I don't get it at all. And from the beginning, I've had this mentality that we're going to win together and we're going to lose together. But either way, it's going to be together. It's not going to be somebody winning at somebody else's expense. And if I can camp on this for just a second,
Please do.
this core value is the one that we talk about the most. And throughout our office, we've got one team written on the wall in several places, and we give an award each quarter. In fact, we'll be giving it this coming Friday. We have an internal event. It is the Chad Nelson One Team Award, and it is also known as the Golden Toilet Brush. And the story, and I get choked up sometimes when I tell the story. Chad Nelson, he's our director of customer success. This is a senior level person in the organization. He's on our leadership team. And after we bought our building, and we were getting ready to have a big event. We were having a bunch of people come in for this open house. And I'm running around, trying to get things ready. And I walk around the corner, and Chad walks around the other corner with a toilet brush in his hand. And I said, Chad, what are you doing with a toilet brush? And he said, Scott, I noticed that the men's room wasn't as presentable as we would like it to be for our guests coming in. So I'm going to clean the toilet. And again, I get choked up. Like, we have a custodial staff that we pay to come in several nights a week to do this. And I said, no, Chad, I got it. And I tried to take the toilet brush out of his hand, and he said, no, I got this. And he politely pushed me away. He's a big former football player. And so, like that right there, I'm a senior level person in the organization. I'm on the leadership team. And you know what? I'm willing to scrub a toilet if it positions our company better. That's the kind of mentality that we want. And so the award is named after Chad, and it is
So it's called the
literally,
Chad Nelson Toilet Brush Award.
it's the Chad Nelson One Team Award, also known as the Golden Toilet Brush. So it is literally a toilet brush on this nice little format that's been spray painted gold. And it is a huge honor to get the Golden Toilet Brush.
That is pretty cool. This is really cool that you actually have created an award system around it. But not only that, I mean, you've made it an honor to win a toilet brush.
Right. Well, and in the context of culture and what we've built, there's not a lot of companies that are willing to, let their freak flag fly and have an award that's a toilet brush. And, we from the very beginning have sought to be just very unconventional. We want to be, everybody wants to be different, but I think that we truly are in a lot of ways. I tell people all the time, we work in the world of accounting software. Like, how much nerdier can it get than accounting software? So somebody's got to liven this up. And man, we can go to a conference and we could have the cheapest booth in the forgotten dark lit corner of the trade show hall, and we can have the longest line of any of the other vendors there, because we come with a different energy. We have a life-size Yeti. His name is Bjorn. Bjorn is our mascot, Bjorn Coding with a K. And we bring Bjorn. In fact, we're going to Phoenix next week for an event, and we're bringing Bjorn. We've got this life-size Yeti costume. And this whole deal came about. We were getting ready for a conference in 2019, and we were working with an outside branding agency at the time, and I'm like, okay, guys, let's brainstorm. What are we going to do for this trade show? And all right, let's give away something big to draw people into the booth. What could we give away? Let's give away a Yeti cooler. No, let's give away a bunch of Yeti coolers. All right, how can we punch that up even more? And I said, guys, I've got a terrible idea. And the number of times somebody starts a conversation with, I have a terrible idea, we almost always end up doing whatever that thing is. And so I said, win a Yeti from a Yeti. Where can we get like a life-size Yeti costume? And get on the internet, and sure enough, there it is. And Bjorn was born, and Bjorn has taken on a life of his own. And people in the recruiting process will ask, like, when do I get to meet Bjorn? And when we've had team members' kids come up here, like, they love to see Bjorn. And we'll go to these trade shows, and I kid you not, people like that don't want to talk to us at the booth, but they see the Yeti, like, people will just creep up to it to take a selfie. And like, he's always in the prospectus for the conference the next year. And so anyway,
Yeah.
we've done this thing it's quirky, it's unique, it's fun, it's different. And it's also the sort of thing that I think attracts the kind of people that we want to bring into the organization.
People who are very conventional, probably not going to work out at your company.
Yeah.
This actually is a good segue, because let's talk about how you aspire people to join your company. Because one of my key points that I always bring up is that you do want your core values to be, this is who we are. If this is not you, don't come here. To be polarized, to be able to say, hey, look at, you mentioned the freak flag fly. That is something that is super important. Now, you can still have diversity, you can still have a lot of the things within your organization, because it doesn't really know any sort of bias when you're really trying to focus in on behaviors and how people operate, as opposed to the skills they bring to the table.
Yeah. We don't hide who we are. And when people, almost everybody who shows up for an interview comes in with the mindset of, this is where I want to work. If you ask my team, oh geez, ask my team, what are Scott's 3 questions? And you're going to get groans and eye rolls. And whenever we interview somebody, it's, can they do the job? Do they want the job or a job? And is this somebody I'd want to have a beer with? It's, the layover test, the beer test, whatever you want to call it. And that second one, I want to point out, like, that's really important. Is this person here looking for the job, or are they looking for a job? The person that's looking for a job is probably not who we're gonna want. And that, I think, is something that can be sussed out with accuracy and pretty early.
That should be sussed out in the phone screen.
And so on that note, one of our best hires from the last year, his name is Ryan, and shout out Ryan. He was referred by another member of the team. Again, going back to, the people that know the best people, and those are the people you want to bring in. And partway through the phone screen, my person who was doing the phone screen paused and said, are you applying to work? Are you applying for the job, or are you applying for the company? And he said, I am applying for the company. And that was just huge. And so, going back to that delicate balance of skill set and cultural fit, sometimes you're going to come across people that, man, their skills. In fact, actually, this guy, when I interviewed him, I said, dude, I don't know what to do with you. Like, your background is all over, and it's deep and it's wide and it's all these different things. I think we just need to get you into the organization and figure out what to do. And that's ultimately what he wanted to. And we've had a couple of other people like that. And so there are times where it might be appropriate to take a little bit of a flyer and say, you look like somebody who is very capable, very powerful, very flexible. Let's just get you in, and we'll start you here, and then figure out where to take you.
I think that is a great point. I'm glad you brought that up and made that, is that there's too many people that are looking for a job. If you're a job seeker, you should really put the thought into, I'm looking for the job as opposed to a job. I know it's really hard when you're out of work to do that, but again, you should be judicious in what you're looking for too. Look for the place that you're going to thrive, not just a place that's going to give me a paycheck until I find the job. I think that's a big mistake that I see people do.
I want to
Yeah.
comment on that just for a second. One of the things that I look at when resumes come across my desk, or these days more often than not, it's a LinkedIn profile. And when I see that somebody has had, 3 jobs in the last 4 years, or, you know, whatever, that is a huge red flag to me. And so, to your point about for job seekers, not just people that are hiring, but for job seekers, hold out for that place that is the company or the job. It's
Yeah.
important to you too, because when you come across my desk, if it looks like you've just gone from job to job to job, I'm going to discount you. And you're probably not going to get very far in our interview process. And so it is to
Yep.
your benefit in the long run as well to not just take a job because it's a paycheck.
Man, amen. You're 100% on that. Shoot, Scott, this goes by so fast. We're getting pretty close on time. What would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience that they can plug into their business today?
Create the kind of company that you want to work for. Growing up, we talked about this the other day. As a kid, my parents talked to us about the golden rule. You treat other people the way you want to be treated. And so think about how you want to be treated, assuming that you're not some sort of glutton for punishment and that
Or
sort of thing.
psychopath.
Right. But build the kind of company that you want to work for. And if the kind of company you want to work for is very buttoned up and we wear a suit and tie every day, and that's great, then go find the people that want that same thing too. But if you're like me and you want to wear shorts and flip-flops to work on any given Tuesday, then, build that and demonstrate that. Know what makes you unique. And, I talked earlier about let your freak flag fly. Man, we do a lot of different things. Texas Independence Day. First, Texas Independence Day is a thing. Texas was once its own country. I'm very proud to be a Texan. And when Texas Independence Day falls on a weekday, it is a company-wide holiday. And it's like legit. So, find what makes you and double down on it.
Those are great words to live by. Scott, thanks so much for your time and investment today. And I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of our audience can find you, find your company, all that good stuff?
Visit us at venntechnology.com. That's V as in Victor, ENN, venntechnology.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power Radio. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. After all this show's for you, we want to continue to bring valuable content to you week after week. You can join the Higher Power Radio community at Higher, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, Radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can drop me an email at rick@innertrue.ai. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to hiring success, Rick Gerard.